This episode of MSP Chat is sponsored by Datto, the MSP first platform for backup and disaster recovery. Right now, Datto is making it easier than ever to level up your continuity offering with the BCDR Fast Track program. You can get up to 3 Datto appliances, Alto or Cirrus models, completely free to use. That's right, hardware included, zero upfront. Even better, you'll get 50% off services, and you can choose any term length, including month-to-month. No lock-in, just instant value and trusted resilience for your clients. This is the perfect way to try Datto, scale fast, and start offering BCDR that actually works without the commitment. Visit Datto.com and request fast-track pricing today. That's Datto.com. And now, on to the show. And 3, 2, 1, blast off! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the MSP Chat Podcast, your weekly visit with two talking heads talking with you about the services, strategies, and success tips you need to make it big in managed services. My name is Rich Freeman. I'm Chief Analyst at Channel Master, the organization responsible for this show. I am joined this week, as I am every week, by our CEO and Chief Strategist at Channel Mastered. His name is Eric Simpson. Eric, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Rich. Thank you. Because I am at home base here and not, dealing with travel and potential TSA issues and things like that. Unlike yourself, you are in Chi-Town as we record this today.
Which is not a bad thing. I love Chicago, and I even love travel, at least as long as it goes relatively smoothly. I am attending the Canales Forum event in Chicago right now. We're pretty much at the conclusion of day one. It's been great. Lots of interesting stuff. May even come up, a piece or two of it may even come up. Who knows? During the conversation we're about to have here. So, happy to be at the Canales. We won't talk about it, Eric, but you know what I'm not happy about is what we were discussing off the air. I'm a Seattle guy. We were just right on the verge of a World Series appearance, and gosh darn it, didn't work out.
Yeah, snatched from the opportunity to make your first visit to the World Series. The Seattle Mariners have never made it. I think they're the only team that has never made it to a World Series appearance.
This is correct. They're the only team in Major League Baseball never to have played an inning in the World Series, and they were one run away in a Game 7 appearance. I've been a season ticket holder, or a partial season ticket holder for, I don't know, 25, more than that, 30-ish years, Eric. So darn close, but wait till next year, as they say. Wait till next year.
Wait till next year. And the Seahawks, they're in contention for the Super Bowl, so let's see. Another
Seattle team. I'm a huge fan of that team too. So yeah, let's just accentuate the positive. Maybe this turns out to be a magical year for the Seahawks. In the meantime, though, let's dive into our story of the week. And I'm going to kick it off, Eric, by asking the question that more and more people are asking. And you've, I'm sure, heard people ask it, and folks in our audience are hearing people ask it all the time. And the question is, are we in an AI bubble? The short answer to that question is, yeah, actually, we kind of are. I mean, how big a bubble, how imminently it will pop, it's hard to say. But, just to take the obvious examples, when even Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg are saying we're probably in a bubble, that's a bad sign. When you look at just to kind of single out OpenAI, right? They've signed this weird circular $100 billion deal with NVIDIA. They've committed to buying 6 gigawatts of GPUs from AMD and another 10 gigawatts from Broadcom. And I don't even know the total what it's going to ultimately cost OpenAI to purchase all those GPUs and then all of the data center capacity and the power. And projected revenue for OpenAI this year, approximately $13 billion. They have recently announced that they're getting into erotica of some form or another over there, but that's really going to have to be a monster deal for them in order to get them from $13 billion a year to the kind of money they're going to need to make to even begin to pay off these investments that they're making. And it's not just them. The entire industry is making a giant bet on artificial general intelligence and super intelligence. So, okay, we're in a bit of a bubble. It's going to pop. It's going to impact some people. How concerned should the people in our audience be? And I'm going to answer that basically by saying not very much and maybe a whole lot. And let me explain what I mean, Eric. Not very much to begin with, okay? Because if this particular bubble that we're talking about bursts, or when it bursts, the companies that are going to be most affected are going to be the companies that I was just naming here. They're going to be companies that make processors, that make LLMs, that build and operate data centers, that do power infrastructure inside the data centers and to the data centers, and they're going to be very significantly impacted. Those are not the companies, generally speaking, that folks in our audience do a lot of business with, have an enormous dependency on. The one exception to that rule is Microsoft. And Microsoft will be affected, but probably not in ways that have disruptive effects for MSPs. The disruption that MSPs might feel is to the extent that the vendors they do a lot of business with right now are, incorporating a lot of AI functionality into their product, and their upstream suppliers get hammered in a bubble. Like, just as for example, to take a random example, if your critical strategic vendors are all CoreWeave partners and CoreWeave goes belly up, that'll be disruptive for everybody involved. Generally speaking, though, that the kind of bubble that's likeliest to happen won't impact MSPs in a hard way. The kind of bubble that an MSP would want to be concerned about is one where there's overinvestment in and too much spending on AI by end users, by their customers. And there really isn't a sign of that happening right now. I've seen some data, for example, recently that was showing basically, if you look on a year-by-year basis since the introduction of ChatGPT, the percentage of AI solutions and services that companies were using at any portion in a given year that they are still using at the end of the year has been going up by significant margins year over year, meaning that there isn't a ton of churn in the AI solutions and products that people are buying. As they're finding the ones they like, they're sticking with them. Average contract sizes, this comes from a company called Ramp. Average contract value in AI for 2025 is $530,000. We project that average contract value will reach $1 million in 2026. So people are investing more in the AI services that they use on the end user side. And there is plenty of data out there that we've talked about on the show indicating that this is all true, despite the fact that end users are still really trying to figure out how best to put these products to work. They very much want to do it. They're investing more in these products. They need help to do that. That is help that MSPs can provide. So do MSPs need to be panicked about an AI bubble bursting? Well, not really in terms of the most direct impacts they might feel. However, speaking now, as somebody who's not that many years away from retirement, sure, they need to be at least a little bit concerned for the same reasons everybody in and outside of IT needs to be concerned. According to some figures we've all probably seen, if you subtract AI out of economic growth in 2025, it more or less disappears. We're in a recession. If you look at the percentage of the S&P 500 represented by, or the NASDAQ, when represented by the Magnificent Seven, it's enormous. If those companies are heavily invested in AI, if a bubble bursts, they get affected. Everyone's 401k gets affected. People look at their 401k statement, feel a lot less wealthy than they did a month before. They stop spending, businesses close down, we could find ourselves in a serious recession. That affects MSPs like it does everyone else. So sure, we all should be concerned by the prospect of an AI bubble, but not, I would argue, because of the IT industry effect that it will have directly on you as an MSP.
Well, I in preparation for today's discussion, I did a little bit of research on my own and found really interesting data myself from Markets and Markets. They do a lot of, analysis. And yes, according to Markets and Markets, Rich, the compound annual growth rate CAGR for AI from 2025 to believe, let me find it here, it's 2032, is 30.6% as forecasted right now, which is huge, right? Compared to the other things that we normally track, in our day to day in technology and managed services and security. It eclipses all of those from a CAGR perspective. Um, and you're right. I was going to bring up that, without AI right now, growth, we would be in a recession. This is what's driving markets right now. All this investment, all this speculation, all these deals. But being the risk averse, engineer that I am a little concerned with what you just mentioned. Is like, well, what kind of revenue and profit would these AI leaders have to generate in order to, meet or beat these expectations and to justify this amazing amount of investment in a technology and a promise without, real actual, you know, I would say significant revenue being generated yet.
Yeah, no, I mean, from their end of the equation, it really doesn't make sense at all unless we get to AGI or super intelligence, basically, and there is this sort of explosion of demand for services we can barely conceive of right now, and then you could begin to imagine this starting to pencil out. Otherwise, it's really, really hard to kind of see how this, resolves successfully for a lot of the companies that are as invested in this as they are right now.
Yeah. And, as the small percentage of me that is optimistic, says, well, the software and technology providers represent the number one vertical market that's really leading the charge here. So, we trust, that we're smart individuals. Technology is driving the S&P 500 and the markets today. It's a big bet, but I'm optimistic that AI is going to better our lives. I mean, 70+% of businesses are using AI now, whether that is through the guidance of an MSP or just using, chat bots and things like that themselves, trying to get into this. We see a lot of development that is, kind of questionable. Yes, about, the news that was announced about, getting into weird, seedy areas of life with AI. It's kind of odd. There's a lot of legal questions around AI being used and these models being trained, across works that may not be public and things like that. So there's a lot of, headwinds here, but I think the promise that it can deliver is very attractive. However, the governance around this stuff is something that, I think about a lot. It's like, well, how, when things go wrong, they typically go very, very wrong. So how do we manage this? How do we put some guardrails around it? How do we regulate it? And I hate the word regulation. I hate the term of that, but I could see something that has so much power and capability, especially when it can be used, for the wrong things, like we're talking about almost weekly on the show, the cyber terrorists and bad actors using AI for nefarious purposes and preying on folks. There's a lot going on here, and it's moving at the speed of light, Rich. How do we keep up with it?
Well, I don't want to get into it here because we've already probably, we've exhausted the topic probably for now. I'm sure we'll be talking about it in different ways on future episodes. But I do think sometimes about all of the things that can go wrong with it. You're the AI advisor to your client. The AI you advise it to use does something really, really bad, and the customer blames you. I wonder sometimes, is there going to be such a thing as AI liability insurance, that like the equivalent of cyber insurance for AI, for AI advisor. I don't know, but it's something to think about, given some of what you were talking about there. But let's go to, I was kind of alluding to the fact that there are a lot of businesses out there very interested in AI, willing to spend money on it, but they still don't quite know how to get value. They need help with that. They need outcomes, Eric, not tools. They're spending on tools. They need outcomes, which is a good bridge your tip of the week.
All right, we'll leave it there, Rich. We'll leave it there. But I think you guys, I'm going to say you heard it here first. Like AI liability insurance. Let's dive into that in a future episode. But yes, this week's tip of the week, Rich, is something that we have, talked about here and there on the show. It's something that we feel is very important for the maturity of MSPs out there in order to add real value to the perception of their services and the value they bring to their customers' relationships and things like that. I've used the term in the past, taking conversations from the server room to the boardroom. This is all about representing your organization and the things that it does for its clients from a value-based perspective. So selling on value, selling on business outcomes and business growth outcomes, keeping your clients out of trouble, rather than selling the way we used to sell, Rich, when I had my MSP practice many moons ago on technical outcomes and technology outcomes and managing your infrastructure and things like that. Nowadays, that is a commodity. Managed services are a commodity. There are so many MSPs out there vying for the same pool of prospects that it's becoming very hard to distinguish and differentiate yourself when we are buying our third-party services and solutions and platforms and applications from the same vendors and then delivering them to our clients. So we have to rise above that. That is table stakes. That is assumed. The conversations I like to hear MSPs have with prospects and clients are, well, of course we manage your infrastructure. Of course we help your users, get the most productivity with our service desk. And of course we keep your organization secure. But many MSPs say that. Here's why we're different. We focus on helping you grow your business. So let's have a conversation around what your plans for growth are. So how do we take that conversation, applying everything that we know, Rich, about technology and security and AI and all this other stuff, and mold the conversation around topics that interest the business owner, the CFO? How do we eliminate roadblocks to growth and productivity? How do we help you scale your business? Technology to you should be an afterthought. We should be, not even seen and not even heard. Things should just operate, and we should be having more strategic conversations about where you're going with your business, what your plans are, what are your business obstacles, and how we can help smooth the way for you. So mapping your services to business outcomes, to growth and scalability outcomes, delivering to your clients real ROI reporting about how your services positively impact their organization. We want to be seen, Rich, as a profit center rather than a cost center. And in another lifetime, when I was in the enterprise, internal IT was always a cost center. It was always deemed as a cost center. How can we reduce our costs? You guys, you're too heavy. We can't afford this. The opposite should be happening with MSPs. We should be evolving our services and our focus to be irreplaceable in that client's business growth strategy. Like, we should be delivering so much value that the last thing they want to do is to fire us or have us let them know that, unfortunately, you don't fit our ideal client profile anymore. We're going to assist you in migrating over to, your next vendor. So this is strategic. So creating the ability for you to have more time in the boardroom rather than in the server room is what this leads to. This means that, yes, we're going to do some of the basic stuff, the blocking and tackling, the technology road mapping and things like that, but becoming more astute and more effective at delivering business intelligence and data. So this is where AI comes in to play. This is where business analytics comes into play, Rich. This is where conversations around other solutions like ERP and CRM come into play, where maybe we don't deliver those services ourselves, but we know who does. And we shepherd those conversations so that we are valuable from a bottom line perspective on that P&L for that customer's business over time.
So, a few things come to mind, and obviously, to a great extent, cut and dried IT services are already a commoditized offering, and that's reason enough to want to be focused on outcomes as a provider of managed services. And this is only going to be more and more of an issue as AI and agentic AI in particular is doing more and more of that work. The companies that are going to continue to prosper and grow in that environment are going to be the ones who really understand their customers enough to be of indispensable strategic value to them. The other thing I'll say, just to kind of maybe bring it back full circle a little bit, is if we are in an AI bubble, and if it does pop, and if that does trigger a recession, that's going to be a really great time for you to be able to demonstrate to your client that you are, as you said, Eric, a profit center, that basically continuing to spend, not only do you need to continue to spend with us because, you don't have a business without the services that we provide you, and we're your most strategic voice in the realm of technology, but we are one of the things that's enabling you to actually grow and profit and so on. And we're not an expense that you cut as opposed to a lot of other vendors maybe that you're doing with. So yeah, plenty of good reasons for folks in the audience here to pay close heed to your advice.
Yeah, and especially if you're offering regulatory compliance services from a cybersecurity perspective, like that's the last thing a client is going to cut. If they're a regulated organization, they need to make sure that they are complying, or else bad things happen, including severe fines and things like that. So steer your organization to adopt and deliver more of these irreplaceable services, and then deliver those on the regular. But again, focusing your conversations with your client about growth, about challenge, they're having challenges, that you can be indispensable as a true strategic business advisor that also manages technology and cybersecurity.
So, Eric, earlier today at the Canales Forum, Jessica Davis, who not too very long ago was a lowly journalist like yours truly, she's now part of the team at Canales. She was on stage with some of her peers from Canales. They were all making predictions for the future. Jessica's was that by 2028, most of the meaningful AI innovation in the world of managed services will come not from vendors, but from venture capital-backed MSP rollups. Well, there are two venture capital-backed MSP rollups in particular that are getting a fair amount of media attention. I've written about both of them. I can tell you, just looking at the traffic numbers, there's a ton of curiosity about these companies out there right now. And you and I had an opportunity at the DattoCon show just a couple of weeks ago to sit down with the co-founders of one of those companies. It's called Titan. You and I are going to take a quick break here. When we come back on the other side, we will be joined in an interview recorded at DattoCon by Soren Patel and David Heffernan. They're the co-founders of Titan, and we are going to learn all about one of these companies that, according to the folks at Canales, is going to be on the vanguard of AI innovation in managed services. Stick around, folks. We will be right back. And welcome back to part 2 of this episode of the MSP Chat Podcast, our Spotlight interview segment, where we are very pleased to be joined in person here at Kaseya's DattoCon 2025 conference in Miami by the two co-founders, the two folks who run what I will call very buzzy MSP roll-up called Titan. You're going to learn a lot about them and about Titan and about what makes it buzzy. I will just say, as we were discussing off the air, I wrote about them in Channelholic, my blog, a few weeks back, and the traffic numbers were above average. There was a lot of chatter on the road. People were very interested in this company, and so we wanted to introduce you to them. But first, why don't you guys introduce yourself to the audience? Sorry.
Definitely. Well, thanks for the high praise. We're glad and excited that folks are starting to hear more about Titan. We think we're working on really interesting, exciting stuff in the MSP space, and glad to be sharing more folks the story of what Titan is. So let's start with a little bit of background on Titan, and happy to give personal backgrounds on ourselves. So what is actually Titan? Titan's an AI-enabled holding company. So we really think about the MSP space in two ways that we all have been talking about it. AI is going to significantly transform the way MSPs operate over the next 5 to 10 years. what it means to be an MSP today does not mean the same thing when you look forward into the industry for the next 5 years. But what's the best way to actually go enable MSPs to enact this AI wave and enact this AI change? For us, our model is, we think the only way to really do that is combine both into one, combine a software company, combine an MSP under the same roof. So we're going out acquiring best-in-class MSPs that are out in the market. And then our AI engineering team works hand in hand with all the MSPs that join our platform to help build out more tools, but then also integrate into the Titan tech stack. So how did we actually get here? So my background is actually fully in the tech space. I've worked at companies like Twitter and Snapchat. At Snapchat, I led actually our Gen AI development. We came out with a product called My AI. It was Snap's version of ChatGPT. We hit number 2 in usage at 100 million plus daily active users on that product, right behind ChatGPT. Really saw how powerful these models were, what they were good at, what they're not good at, and knew that startups and big tech would be at the forefront of going and adopting these technologies, but other industries would be slower to adopt. And that's what got me really excited.
Yeah, and David, the other co-founder at Titan, my background also comes from the AI world. Started my career off with this company called Scale AI. They just sold to Meta, quite in the news a few months ago. But while I was there, I worked on self-driving cars, worked with customers like Waymo, Neuro, Zoops, Apple, all those guys. As Scale continued to scale, we got about 100,000 labelers globally. You can imagine managing a workforce like that becomes quite a challenge, and we really only had Excel tools at the time. So I helped launch the marketplace team. We built all the product infrastructure to manage that workforce, whether it was running tasks to the right taskers at the right time, managing incentive plans to help motivate them to have high quality and high throughput. And also on the quality and control side, we wanted to build great tools, layer AI on top of it. So we were actually submitting good data to our customers. Spent another time at this company called High Touch, joined when they were just a couple mil of revenue, helped launch a lot of new product lines, and now they're another unicorn. But for my time at Scale, I saw how valuable it was to have the engineers and the operations on the same team. The feedback loops that you're able to get when you're building internally and have such high buy-in, where everyone's vertically integrated from the customers, the management team, to the operators, the engineers. You can ship a lot faster, and that just leads to much faster feedback loops in the AI.
How did you, you both have sort of elite level AI, Silicon Valley kind of experience. What gets you from that experience to the thought that we can take these skills, this knowledge that we have, and apply it to service providers of some kind generally, and then maybe IT managed service providers specifically? What gets you from your background to Titan?
It's a great question. I think high level, we have a broad thesis that AI is going to transform all the services. And for us, there's some sectors that are better and some that are worse. And so we really started to look for sectors where there's high overlap between what agent capabilities are good at today and then what the actual workforce is doing on a day-to-day basis. So you think about IT services, 2 of the biggest things they're actually doing is around customer support. We've seen great companies come out of that, and the AI side of the house, and then code generation, those technical type use cases. So we really started from that workflow. Work with technicians, got really great data from their tickets and time cards, and we're able to see what agents are able to do to drive margin impact and productivity impact there.
Soren and David, you were here yesterday, the pre-day. Autotask Community Live has an M&A symposium. They've done it for several years now. We see more traditional type of presentations and traditional type of folks that are, looking to roll up MSPs. You're doing something really unique and different. So, I'll try and keep up. Can you give us the 30-second elevator pitch to a potential MSP at this conference that sat through the M&A symposium about Titan and why they should, be interested?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a bunch of great platforms out there that are trying to build larger and larger MSPs. What the Titan vision is really to go build the leading MSP provider in the market. We think we can be the number 1 player and many orders of magnitude larger than the top players in the market today. So I think for owners who are really excited about the technology, about AI, and being in an ecosystem that is around innovation is a really, really interesting value prop of whether they're thinking about whether they want to be involved with the business, not involved with the business. What is the story that they're joining on to, and what do the next couple of years look like for them? I think a period of rapid growth and innovation is actually much more interesting next couple of years to spend and actually be a part of transforming the industry.
So I think one of the reasons why there's been a lot of interest in you guys and what you're doing, there's been plenty of involvement by private equity in the managed services space, both in terms of acquiring MSPs and investing in vendors that sell to and through MSPs. You've got some pretty serious funding and a pretty serious funder you're working with in General Catalyst. Tell folks who don't know who is General Catalyst. Why are they maybe different from private equity, and what is it they see in what you're doing here? The value proposition that got them on board.
Yeah, General Calif have been amazing partners to go out and work with. For the folks who aren't aware, they're a 35-year-old venture capital fund with almost $40 billion in assets now. And their whole history has actually been in pure play tech investing and traditional venture capital investing. So they've invested in backed teams like Stripe, Ramp, Livongo, Airbnb. So these generational companies that really have defined the tech space for the last 10, 20 years. And what we saw partnering up with them is they really saw the opportunity in the services market similar to how we saw it. Traditionally, software has been thought of software, and services is a kind of a separate sector that a lot of these VC firms have not been as interested, as excited about, because there hasn't been a great lever of how do you transform and impact a service-like business. The key part of a service business has always been people first, and the scale is linearly. You grow revenue, you have to grow people. Venture is very much interested in how can you create 10x, 100x type of outcomes, and that's now possible in the services market with AI. So they're actually doing this type of play, this AI-enabled rollup, as they call it, in a handful of different verticals. So in accounting, call centers, and homeowners associations, and a couple of other bets. And we've partnered up with them and been lucky enough to be pretty vision aligned on how do you go tackle the MSP space together.
So your thesis is all around leveraging AI in a very potentially unique and different way. So how is Titan applying AI uniquely and differently than what MSPs at this conference can get from other vendors in the expo hall?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a misconception that you can buy the like shiniest tool off the shelf and it's going to just start automating things from day one.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it worked like that.
Life would be a lot easier, but we also wouldn't be here. In reality, it's actually like redesigning the delivery model from the ground up. Another like strong reason you actually like need to partner very closely with the asset versus just drop something in. So if you think about like what the actual capabilities are that what agents can do, they actually can like mirror, like augment or completely replace a lot of the workflows that technicians are doing on a day-to-day basis. So on the like easier side of requests, it's around like license management, password resets, basic security alerts, everything from like assigning groups. But what the agents are actually able to do is like go into the end platform, look up information, dynamically generate these like playbooks around like how to resolve those type of issues. And then what's very interesting is like as you like use the tool more and more, we're actually collecting feedback from the technicians and getting data about how to resolve those types of issues in the future. We're actually seeing agents outperform technicians in various use cases. We had this ticket last week. There was like 2 users from the same company that filed that SharePoint was running pretty slow in the evening. As that a ticket came in, the agent was able to look through all the past tickets where the company looked through documentation. They realized that a backup job had been turned on at the same time. And so when it was able to correlate that, it actually like basically filed a complete triage report, handed it off to a real technician, and they were able to solve that type of issue in a matter of like 15 minutes.
Yeah, so to get to the point around how does this differ from a software-only type of model, and being outside in, you're always tailoring your product to not just one customer, to a bunch of different customers. There's a bit of generalization that you need to do versus getting deep. But if you need to make process changes, you don't have that power to actually work with MSP to be like, hey, here's a completely different way that your technicians should be working. Here's maybe a different pod structure that your team should be focused in. And it's not just about dropping an AI, it's making those operational changes at the same time such that the technicians and AI are able to actually effectively work together. And that we think the best way to go do that is put both under the same house. Another tactical example, technicians and our engineers talk every single day. Sometimes they request feature changes and our engineers have them in production live 2 hours later. And I think that sort of feedback loop is really only possible when you're like tightly coupled on the same team.
It's really interesting. We've spoken before, but this is sort of the first time that I've really begun to wrap my brain around the idea that you are both a software company and a services company. And it's funny because that's why when I'm interviewing you, sometimes because I know how to interview a software company and I know how to interview a services company, and it gets confusing with you guys because you're both. From the software company kind of point of view. So I mean, first of all, this is not off the shelf software. You built the software that you have, and you're continuing to do so. If I remember right, you're really kind of focused on the service desk right now. I mean, can you paint a picture for us of where you're going with your software stack as it grows, evolves, et cetera?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think like beyond just like the service desk, we're actually very focused on how do we improve the end customer experience. And I think today a lot of customers are pretty frustrated with their MSPs. They seem to like skate by doing not enough to like really make their customers extremely excited. And so all the touch points you have with them is really what we're focused on optimizing as well, whether it's like fast response times, more personalized answers. The absolute worst thing that you can do at an MSP is like be talking to your customer and ask them a basic question, or they ask you a basic question, or you ask them a basic question. And that's information you should already know. So we're looking at like all the different touch points that they have, whether it's like with the account management team, with the procurement team, with the service desk team, really thinking from the ground up, like how do we design a really like product driven and like white glove experience for those end users. So what that kind of translates to in terms of our product roadmap, we're focused on pretty much like all functions on the delivery side, from like account management to procurement, NOC, SOC. The other like big half of this is actually like, sure, you're driving all this efficiency on the delivery side, but how do you enable the growth with this? And so there's a ton of great technology that we're deploying across the like sales team, the like go-to-market motions, content generation, outbound, all that type of stuff.
So talk to us a little bit about the integrations that are on the roadmap or you're already creating with your platform and all the tools that MSPs use. And kind of the second part of that question is, why should MSPs be more attracted to this, specifically around what they're hearing from other groups that are saying we're building our own AI stack and things like that? So it's more of a piggyback question and asking you to differentiate the value proposition from maybe differently than what we've heard so far in the interview.
Yeah, I think a big difference between private equity investors and venture capital investors is really just this focus on long-term growth, innovation, and sustainability. Like private equity investors generally have a time horizon that they're looking to exit their businesses and not saying we don't have similar considerations or constraints. But I think putting a larger upfront investment into tech build out, engineering build out is something that our venture capital backing actually enables us to go do without there being concern of like, oh, why are you spending all this cost? Like profitability is only supposed to go in one direction. All the companies that join our platform like see profitability gains, but at the Titan and Holdco level, like we are spending significant resources on this engineering build out and this team build out, and that's only enabled by our venture capital backing.
And just in terms of your thinking about exits, because it does, with private equity and a closed-end kind of fund, it's like a few years, and they're probably looking to get out. When we spoke, you described a very ambitious goal for where you want to get, and said flat out, we're not getting there in 3 to 5 years. So there will be an exit event of some kind, but a long ways off in the future. So I'd maybe talk just a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think we want to separate also these two things around the overall Titan story and vision, like our involvement in the company versus like liquidity for partners who join us on that mission. So our long-term vision and plan is to go be $100 billion company. We think you can be that vertically integrated software plus services solution. The MSP market in the US alone is over 120 billion in revenues, globally 300 billion in revenues. There's a lot of market share out there to go out and try to capture. Now, if that is the vision, it will take some more time to actually get there. But I think in earlier points, thinking about potential IPO options, continue to build the company in public markets is a really interesting, fascinating point. Some of these, the top end of the MSP market in terms of size of some of these players, you're now starting to break into maybe the point at which IPO or these other liquidity options start to look interesting. But I think for us, in that like 5 plus or minus type of year timeline, like looking towards those type of liquidity events for partners who join onto the Titan platform, we understand they don't have a 10-year time horizon, even if we have a time horizon of that time length.
So there's a little bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt about private equity coming into the MSP market, right? We've heard it in different ways. I mean, some folks are very positive about it. I heard a lot of positivity yesterday, but I also hear from other folks that, hey, you know what? It's eroding kind of what the promise of the MSP is, breaking it down into profitability, efficiency, rather than that service component, that relationship component with their customers. How, in your mind, is a VC-funded roll-up like Titan different than private equity? You touched a little bit on, but I want to get into this kind of, folks are on the fence like, I'm not sure if I like it. No, I'm all in. How do you see it?
Yeah, I'm very glad that you asked that. I think there's all of the things that a traditional wide roll makes sense. Synergies between different companies, private equity firms are going after multiple arbitrage. Sure, there's all of that, but they really don't have this focus on value creation in the way that is very, very core to our company. Like, we talk about AI all the time. The point of AI, sure, you can get more efficient, but the end customer is actually getting a much better end customer experience. They're getting faster response times, fewer IT issues in the first place. So switching from a Titan platform MSP to another MSP should actually result in a higher ticket load, slower response times. We think that competitive differentiation for where the end customer is actually like a very, very strong staying power in transforming and acting upon what MSP owners were actually thinking about in the first place. Like, they started their businesses because they wanted to provide high quality IT services.
It also frees up a lot of time from the technicians to actually be consultative with their customers versus just reactive to their tickets. I think like the most value that a technician can actually provide today is like roadmap and direction for the company versus just like helping to resolve the requests. The other thing that differentiates as well is on the growth side, like rather than coming in and trying to cut as much cost, like leveraging that AI to enable much more growth as well. So really excited about a lot of the initiatives we're doing there as well.
How many acquisitions have you made to date? And then when you're evaluating future acquisitions, because this was an interesting thing we talked about before, it's like, what is appealing to you in a potential acquisition?
Totally. So we've done one acquisition to date, announced that in the past month or two, looking at a bunch of other targets as you guys would expect. But in terms of targets that we're looking towards, there's all the basic financial analysis that you have to do. You have to cross your T's, dot your I's, of course. Find high quality businesses with high retention rates, ideally organically growing. But on the flip side of it, the really big important piece for us and why we actually partner with RFA as our first acquisition is cultural alignment across the team. How excited are they to go adopt AI solutions themselves, work with our team hand in hand? It's been amazing in these 2 months working with all the technicians at RFA. They're really excited about pushing the industry forward and reimagining what it looks like to do MSP services. And I think especially for the first handful of acquisitions that we do, it needs to be that same mentality and that same level of excitement for us to really get on board.
And RFA is that?
Yeah, RFA is our first acquisition. A sizable MSP based in New York City, serving primarily financial services customers.
We got a follow-on question. Is there, in your ideal acquisition profile, does it matter what platforms they're currently using today, or do you have an ideal kind of a platform that they come with that you're going to integrate everybody with that way?
Yeah, one of the advantages of having in-house tech is we're actually like pretty agnostic to what tools they're using. I think the like core agent, like workflow and engine is pretty similar. All these requests like look the same. The only thing that might differ is like the tools or like endpoints you're actually using. We've also separated and have our own data layer. So as long as you can ingest that data, our engineering team can still up a new integration in a day or two. So it's really not a concern what platform they're on today, rather than we can just build around that.
I would assume that opens up, your target market quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we didn't want to like lose anyone, so we were pretty like had the foresight to make sure we built our platform pretty agnostically.
No, it's a really interesting point, because it, from an MSP standpoint, what it means is I can take advantage of these advanced AI technologies without ripping and replacing everything that I'm doing today.
Yeah, we know that's a ton of work to go rip and replace the entire stack. But I do think the end workflow starts to look pretty different. So at RFA already, technicians are spending a large portion of their time in the Titan platform. And I think the goal is very much to get to the point where technicians are actually doing all of their work in the Titan platform. You're integrating with all these systems that they have in the back end, for like reintegrated ConnectWise, with the Kaseya, different RMM systems with Microsoft Stack, all of those. But they're really just turning, rather than going to 30, 40 different tools to do your work, a single pane of glass where you can actually do all of the work because it's natively built in to have all of these integrations.
You're just using all these different platforms to ingest the data into the lake, and then Titan platform then does what it needs to do.
Yeah, not just the data aspect. The other aspect is actually the ability for technicians and the AI agents to take actions in all these end platforms. That's like a very large unlock of truly saving time and truly making folks more productive. It's not just a context question of like half the problem is finding the right information to present to the technician, but the other half is trying to actually go do the work.
Well, like I said before, super interesting story. I appreciate you guys taking some time out to share it with us on the show. For folks in our audience here who want to learn more about Titan, maybe get in touch with you, where would you plan?
Yeah, feel free to, our website's titanmsp.ai. You can reach me at Soren@titanmsp.ai, David at Titanmsp.ai. And yeah, we'd love to set up some time to chat.
Fantastic. Thank you again, guys. Good to meet face to face.
Likewise. Thanks for having us.
Great.
And folks, we are going to take a quick break here. When we come back on the other side, Eric and I will share some final thoughts about this very interesting conversation with the folks from Titan. Have a little fun, wrap up the show. Stick around. We will be right back. And welcome back to part 3 of this episode of the MSP Chat podcast. And once again, we thank Soren Patel and David Heffernan of Titan for joining us in that interview during the conference there. They and the company they are building is an object of intense curiosity in the IT industry right now. And so obviously it's really a great opportunity for us and our audience to hear directly from them what it is that they are building. And you know, Eric, I've been talking to these companies, both Titan and Shield Technology Partners, the other very similar conceptually a company out there backed by venture capital. I've been talking to these guys. I've been writing about these guys for a while, but it really wasn't until this conversation that we did at DattoCon that it clicked for me exactly what's different about these guys and how unbelievably different it is. Because I tended to think of Titan as an MSP rollup, and there are plenty of those out there, with this sort of especially sophisticated in-house AI lab. You know, a Silicon Valley caliber AI lab. And that would be different, and that would be interesting, right? But there are other MSP rollups out there that have their own in-house AI dev teams, and New Charter, as we've said before. I mean, they went out last year and they bought an AI company so that they would have their own in-house AI lab. That's not really what's kind of new and different here. Here's what's kind of crazy new and different, Eric. The way to think about Titan is not as an MSP rollup with an in-house AI development team, but as an AI software company with an in-house MSP unit. Or really, the better way to kind of think about it is this, as far as I'm aware, this is the first time in the industry that you have had a vendor that does software that's relevant to MSPs and doesn't partner with MSPs. It buys them and is, you know, building them into and building a business with them. It is fusing both the software business and the services business under one roof, which is exactly what David said during that interview there. Their theory is the way to win in AI is you've got to have both the software company and the services company under one roof. And we could talk a little bit about why that would be. But you tell me, Eric, in the entire history of managed services, I can't think of a company like a ConnectWise or a Kaseya or Enable or anyone else who bought MSPs, and that was their sort of model for competing as opposed to sold to and through them. It's a very different thing, and pros and cons. It's just going to be fascinating to see how it plays out for them.
You know, you're right, Rich. That I felt the same exact way. I thought, well, wait a minute. This is the opposite of what we typically see, right? So this is very unique and different, and I would say is probably one of the compelling reasons why they're getting so much attention and buzz and the interest of investors and things like that, because it is leveraging the AI first message and then bundling into it the crazy M&A buzz that's already happening around the MSP market right now together. So, stronger together. It's very, very interesting what they're doing. And I've got to say, they are well positioned to pull this off.
Yeah. No, yeah, they very, and I'm sure folks in the audience agree, just based on having met with and listened to those co-founders for a while. So, yeah, fascinating story, and it'll be one, obviously, that we and many other people are watching going forward. But for now, Eric, we have time for just one last thing, and a little note to Riley Simpson, who does the editing of this show and does a wonderful job at it too, is that I think at this point it would be great if he was to work in Wipeout, the song Wipeout in the background, and you'll understand why in a moment, Eric, because our one last thing this week concerns what a news article I'm reading calls a surfboard stealing otter. Just not too far from where you are in Southern California, Eric, in Santa Cruz, a little bit further north. Visitors to a California beach are saying there is a particularly aggressive otter out there in Santa Cruz, and he's not just, aggressive at people and upset at people. He's going out to people on surfboards. He's biting them, although fortunately not enough to break the skin, but just enough to get them off that surfboard so that he can get on. This otter, Eric, really likes to surf, doesn't own a surfboard, and this is the only way that he can figure out how to, and he will stay on that board, apparently, I'm looking for it, for quite about 20 minutes at a stretch. So really, really into surfing, and a very creative otter, and I'm glad no skin is being broken here. But if you're a surfer in Santa Cruz, be on the lookout.
So his nickname must be Little Puppet, and he's doing swim-bys then in the hood, Rich. Taking people's rides.
Yeah. All right. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us. That's all we've got for you this week. We're going to be back in a week's time with another episode for you. Until then, I will remind you that this is both a video and an audio podcast, which means that if you're listening to us right now, but you'd like to check us out on video, you can go to YouTube, look up MSP Chat. You'll find us there if you're watching us on YouTube. But you're into audio podcasts, go to Spotify, Google, Apple, wherever it is you get your audio podcast, you're going to find us there too. And wherever it is that you find us, please subscribe, rate, review. It's going to help other people find and enjoy the show just like you do. The show is produced by the great Russ Johns. It is, as I said before, edited by the great Riley Simpson. They're part of the team with us here at Channel Mastered. They are ready and able to do a podcast for you, in fact, if you'd like. But we do way, way more than that for our clients at Channel Mastered. We are here to help our vendor clients build, grow, optimize, perfect MSP channels. And if you want to learn more about working with us on that front, go to www.channelmastered.com. Channel Mastered has a sister organization. It is called MSP Mastered. That's Eric working directly one-to-one with MSPs to help them grow and optimize their business. You can learn more about that at www.mspmaster.com. So once again, we thank you for joining us. We'll see you in a week. Until then, folks, please remember, as we so often ask you to, you can't spell channel without MSP.